Okay, good morning. It's Friday morning, and I went in to post a recording that I did yesterday, and I saw this on my screen. And so, it's some reason it looks like the university there's some kind of a hiccup with the recordings and that they're not available. So I'm doing this on QuickTime right now just to make sure that everybody gets the message about the midterm, and then also I wanted to give some more information around some of the content this week. I really want to talk this week and really my last full lecture with you. And I mean, I'm around the rest of the semester and I'm participating, but Stokes is going to take over from here. And in terms of brand narrative, but I wanted to make sure that we did some content activation things around making sure that you understand how theory in our space works and the importance of that. And I'm going to give you some examples of that from some professional training stuff that I have done in the past. So just to make sure that everybody is on board and understands what's happening with the midterm. Um, the midterm, the midterm consists of these 4 questions. Okay, so for each question, you need to do the following. You need to make sure you do a checkbox, for the following 4 things for each question. Each question is worth 5 final percentage points. The entire midterm is worth 20% of your test. So if you are able to think about it in the fact that if you get a 0 on this, which I doubt anybody will, but if you get a 0 on this, the best you can do in my class is an 80. So make sure that you take this very seriously. Make sure that you are cranking and working hard on this. Hopefully you've already started. I know some people have already started working on this. And now you're seeing the things happening from my house. And so I'm going to tell my wife, please don't text me right now. Please no texts now. And so anyway, very, very important. So for each question, what is brand content strategy? And be sure to define the brand in your answer. So that's question number 1. So for that question, you need to make sure that you cover the topic, that you have a research rigor around that topic, so which means that you have a minimum of 2 professional sources and 2 academic sources. And what is meant by that, I made a video earlier. I'm not sure if it'll be playable because of what's happening with the issues with the university around Zoom, but make sure that the professional sources are sources like from HubSpot or from Entrepreneur Magazine or from Brand Week or from Ad Age or from Salesforce. It could be a white paper. Could be a white paper from Adobe, right? Those are professional sources. The other sources are academic sources. Those are peer-reviewed sources that are in scientific journals or book chapters. Okay, so then what we're looking for is that work to be something that had to be reviewed by scholars in their field and approved. So that's the difference. So for each question, you need to make sure that you cover your topic. In other words, answer your question. And I would do that, and I would approach that to say, what is brand content strategy? Brand content strategy is blah, blah, blah. Defining a brand means this, right? So really contextually connect the question to the answer. It's always the best approach, all right? The deliverable means that you have no typos, you have no grammatical errors, and you're using proper APA. So you're citing within the text of the answer, and then you're putting all your references at the end of your test. So after all 4 questions, you have all your references just like you would in a normal paper. And then I'm looking for you to answer your questions in less than 500 words, and I'm going to take off a point per answer when you have over 500 words. So why do I care about that? I care about that because I want you to be able to do more with less. You need to be able to be, brevity is your friend. You need to be able to say something with less words, have it being more impactful. That's really the heartbeat of everything that we do in our field, okay? So hopefully that answers the questions that I had previously. If you're not able to watch the other video, you can watch this one and you can get caught up on that. But for each question, you have to have a minimum of 2 academic and 2 professional sources. That's the minimum. I'm expecting to see more. Each question is worth 5% of your final grade. Okay, enough of that. I'm not sure how much more. What is this? I'm not staying at Treasure Island. So, ah, actually, let me just get rid of that altogether. Okay, so I wanted to jump into, I got the clarification video. I wonder if this will even play. Yeah, so something's wrong with all this stuff. So I want to get into the clarification video, and actually I had an amazing conversation with Jeff Julian yesterday that I did record on Zoom that I can't post right now. That's what I was trying to post this morning. And it's for a book chapter that I'm writing with Dr. Richards around brand fandom. And so really I asked him at the end of it, I said, hey, do you mind if I post this, this Zoom, this question answer thing that we just did? Because I thought the class would really dig it. And he said, yeah, that's awesome. And then he says that he's ready for us to have a one-on-one with him, and would love to answer questions from you guys. So I think that's a fantastic opportunity for us to really do a deep dive into the book and everything that Julian focuses on. So wrapping things up here, you have a test question on content value. And this is a great place to look for some of the foundational pieces for that. How it demonstrates value. And this is what Jeff talked about so much yesterday when I spoke with him, was the personalization and the fact that you're connecting with somebody in a real term, and how important that is to do that at a personal level. To not be, and that doesn't mean that you're just using their name in an e-blast. That means that you're really forming a personalized bond with your customer. And if you're not really understanding the statements that describe the way you plan to deliver value in your content story, then you're missing the whole point of that personalized nature, because value is really something that is inherent to the individual, and that the value proposition there is something that's going to motivate somebody to do something. The value proposition for you to go out to dinner or to go on a date with somebody is the fact that you want to be with that person, or you want to go eat that food, or whatever it might be. That's the driver, and that's what we're looking for in a marketing space. And what we're doing is we're trying to activate those drivers with our communication and our touch points. Anything around our content, that's what we're trying to activate, that stuff. So really thinking about content and thinking about the content owner. Now, the Scrum Master, you may say, well, what in the world is a Scrum Master? In Agile, a Scrum Master, and especially when you're using Jira or a source like that, a Scrum Master is basically the project manager, but a project manager really hyper-focused on understanding what are the roadblocks that are happening to not make something happen, and really organizing the backlog of content in the sense of, when we think about content, and let's just come over here and go to Jira, and we'll go to the Siren Marines board. And we think about the log in another account. I got a couple accounts here. That's not what I want. Maybe it is. Let's see how that works out. Oh. No, that's not working out. Okay. I've got 2 Jira accounts, so I am not. Give it one more try here. What's going on here? Let's try this. Hey, okay, good enough. Okay, so very weird. All right, so when we think about the backlog are all these things that are to do. Um, and you see these things were crossed off. That's because they've been done, right? These are things to be done. But the backlog is basically, here's the backlog right here. So the backlog is basically everything that we don't have time to put into the sprint. The sprint is going to be your time period, and usually it's a week or 2 weeks that you run projects through. And when you're running those projects through, you're saying, okay, these are, and we come to the Jira board, these are the projects, this is the sprint right here for this week. And at the end of the week, you would complete the sprint. And I've been an administrator, so I'm the one that's able to complete the sprint. And then you can see what's been done over here, right? So we have the stuff to do during the sprint, the stuff that's in progress during the sprint, and the stuff that's gotten done. But what we don't have here are the things that are in the backlog. And the backlog are the things that we're going to drag up to the sprint for a particular week. And so the Scrum Master is somebody who is really the project owner, who is going to be taking the project and all the different teams and really understanding the inner workings of every single project and understanding what needs to happen for every single project and really looking at what are the roadblocks, what are the things that are preventing you from finishing that project, and really being in tune with the team players to really understand when somebody's overperforming or underperforming. And that's because you're using you're using story points, or you're using something measurable, and that's something that Jeff and I talked a lot about at the end of the thing yesterday. Because that's one of the hardest things to set up is what is the LOE, or what is the level of effort for a particular project? How long is a particular project going to take? Those are the things that it takes a while of moving through sprints to really understand what is that story point. Is it worth an hour? Is it worth 3 hours? Is it worth 30 minutes? We want to assign some kind of measurable amount to each one of those points to understand how we really are able to do work and what kind of work we're able to take on at particular times. So, a couple of things. This is like the content backlog. Again, I wanted to show you what it is. It's the concepts, it's big ideas, it's developed ideas that are ready for production, it's published content that's stale. We have all these different things that we could have in the backlog, and that we could, at any time, if we have time, if we look at our sprint and our week, and we know how much time we actually have to do stuff, and we look at the projects that we have, and they're not summing up to the total amount of story points or the total amount of time that we have, then we can drag projects that may be a few weeks or a few months down the road, we can drag them into the sprint so that we're able to knock some things out while we have the time to do that. And that's a super important part of running a sprint, and that's a super important part of really putting together your playbook for your content. Because what you're doing is you're really trying to think about your backlog and think about what you're doing. And again, Jira is what I've been showing you right here, but there's all different kinds of different pieces to this that you can use that are really, really powerful. And so that's the main part that I wanted to make sure that we focused on. I mean, this is a great summary of what we're doing. I mean, getting your personas right, really understanding that customer journey path, and then assigning those content topics that are going to move people along that journey, and really looking for what are those gaps that we're seeing in our content that we need to fill. And those are the things that we want to create Jira tickets, okay? Create Jira tickets for, and then put those things in the backlog and start to push them up into the weekly work that we're doing based on the priority of what we need. So that really wraps up what we're talking about in the Julian book, and I think that's probably helpful for what we're talking about in the exam. I want to talk briefly about a couple more things just as a summary of what we talked about so far this semester leading up to the midterm. And I'm going to do that using using a professional training deck that I've presented many times with my colleague Dr. Melanie Richards in the department for commercial customers, Fortune 500 folks that are analytics people or content strategy people or social media people or directors of marketing, directors of communication, those kinds of things. And so when we think about digital transformation, we're always thinking about people, processes, and technology. We're trying to understand how do we get the right people, and it's not just the right people, but aligning those people in the right organizational structure so that they can be very efficient and effective. And then we build these processes that we're going to put in place. And if you're on my media team at TS or GA, my media team, you know that we've been struggling trying to get. We got the right people. I'm not sure that we have. I think we're finally getting to where they're organized correctly, but our processes are still a little bit whacked. We have things coming in, work to be done, and that's why we're putting everybody on Jira, because we're really focused on creating those processes. And Jira is the technology that we're picking to help us with the processes and support the processes that the people are doing. So the three things are super related and super important. And honestly, Melanie and I always ask our customers in our classes, which one do you think is the hardest? And the answers vary across all three. But clearly, I think that the hardest part are the people, because if you don't have the right people doing the jobs, if they're not organized correctly, you don't have the right leadership to really focus on what needs to be done, and they believe and they support what needs to be done. Then the processes and the technology won't come together. So that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure I covered. And the whole idea there is digital transformation of an organization, right? So when you look at Gartner in 2016, how to design a customer experience using persona-driven customer journeys. This is the roadmap for every single thing that I do. It doesn't matter if it's the Salvation Army of Johnson City. It doesn't matter if it's Susan G. Komen for The Cure. It doesn't matter if it's Nike. It doesn't matter if it's Adobe. It doesn't matter if it's East Tennessee State University. These are the things that you have to do. You have to define your goals. You have to define your personas, and that's what we spent so much time at the beginning of the semester understanding those things. And then you need to really map those decision moments, those pain points, those drivers. Audit your content, look at your stories that engage, then you define your channels, and then you measure and test and optimize. So this is really the customer experience and how we create a customer journey and how we think about creating a campaign that's going to be effective. These are the steps. And again, this is my roadmap. I do the same thing no matter what. Usually the insight sits right here. So if we're going to drive and we're going to have some kind of singular position of an insight that's going to be a brand differentiator, which is something that my own personal research my own personal research, published book and other things really found is what makes the difference, is really understanding what is the difference in buying this brand, what's the differentiator, what is that insight that's going to be able to motivate people in these decision moments. So super important. I've talked about customer journeys, and we've gone through a little bit of that. I wanted to talk about some of the theory around content activation, okay? Because the rest of the semester you're going to get deep into narrative and deep into putting together a content story that is across a bunch of different tactics. And you really need to understand some of these tactics that we might use that are some of these theoretical principles we might use to really assign content correctly. So the first one is self-actualization, and this is a screen grab that I did from, let's just do this, a screen grab that I did from Nike's website. And this was basically the hero image. When I got on the website, this is what I saw. And I saw this because this was at a time where I was buying CrossFit stuff. And then I get to Nike.com, and then bam, right there on the hero image is an image like this, right? So do I want to be like this guy? Absolutely, man. Look at that guy. I mean, he's awesome, right? So the whole idea there is that we're going to personalize the content, which is essential, as close as we can get to that as possible. But this self-actualization is really thinking of the fact of using Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which wasn't originally designed for any kind of marketing context, but we all kind of think of it that way, where the very first lowest level that we have to satisfy as human beings are really to eat and drink water. And then, if you move up from that, then there's really finding a mate, and then there's growth, and then self-actualization is really more about that ideal self, and that's what this is showing me right here. So creating content that shows the human ideal self, and that plays into empathy, and that plays into making the customer the hero, right? We always should be the sage. We always should be the Yoda in the sense of what we're doing with our brand. The customer is always the hero. So in other words, if you are somebody who's into CrossFit, if you're using the perfect training partners, the Nike Metcon 3s, then you're going to be able to do that lift better than you could before. And that's because that makes you the hero, and Nike is the one that's helping you become the hero. So another approach to content, which is a motivator, is the idea of clustering. And clustering is the idea that when you're putting things on a web page or when you're putting things in an e-blast, you don't want to have too many things together. Our mind will get overwhelmed with too many choices. And we can really, and our mind can really tap out. And so when we think about this, we really want to think of somewhere between 3 and 5. 7 is really the maximum amount. If you think about phone numbers, and nobody remembers phone numbers anymore because we all have them programmed in our phones. But when you think about phone numbers originally outside the area code, seven digits, right? There's a reason that there's 7 digits. And when we try to put content together, we're trying to put like pieces of content together so that we're able to help people understand something, but we're not overloading. It's a cognitive overload that we really could be bringing to something when people have too many things to read, too much information to go through. So that's what we would call clustering. Now, one of the most powerful motivators of folks in the content space is to provide peer proof and social proof. And this is, you can think of it like I have here, these examples here. Again, this is from Squarespace, or from Square, I mean. So these are examples that I just pulled off their website because I liked what they did here. They clustered those pictures together as well. So they've got multiple things happening. But this is really just that affirmation from others that you're making the right choice. And that's what reviews are for. That's what Yelp is. That's what Yelp does. That's what Amazon reviews do. That's what reviews on websites do, is really to say, hey, look, I'm just like you. You may not know me, but I'm just like you, and this product is really great for me. So foot in the door is a way that is just a gradual persuasion technique where we get an initial modest request that proceeds to a larger request. So these are two screen grabs that I pulled that I thought really illustrated that well. And this is, register for a free trial. Are you a student or a teacher, right? So in other words, you're going to get a free trial. That's the foot in the door. And then whenever you click on that, then usually it still asks you for your credit card, and it says you have 30 days and you can cancel within 30 days. The other one down here is congratulations, James, you're approved. So in other words, here you go. You're already ready to go. We've got the door open for you. Just come on in and get your American Express card. Now, anchoring is something that I believe everyone should know about, no matter what you do, and it's something that is a powerful it's a powerful negotiation tactic. And basically, anchoring is setting up the perception, or setting up an influencer point of information that then everything gets compared against. Okay, so in this example here, you have a screen grab that I did that was from, actually I say I did that, but I think this is coming from a student. I think some of these screen grabs are coming from student decks from a year or two ago. I can't remember now. Some of them I did, and some of them I pulled from some other student work. So Anyway, my apologies. I'm not sure, but anyway, so the Microsoft one here, or I'm sorry, the QuickBooks one here, that looks like Microsoft, uh, is really saying, hey, 13, no 10, $27, no 18, $40, no 24. So they're anchoring the red price to the other price. And so you go, wow, okay, I can really tell that this one, the 40 to 24, that's the biggest difference, and that's really where QuickBooks is trying to drive people, is to go to that higher package. And in fact, if you look on the right there, the desktop version, the same thing. But that most popular kind of call out is still saying, hey, pay attention to me, and this is the one you should do. And you can get the free trial for this one, but we're going to take your credit card and we're going to put you down for the Plus account to try. And so you've got a foot in the door thing happening here with the free trial. You've got the anchoring with the pricing, and then you even have a call out there with the most popular that is working all to try to drive people's behavior to picking that particular choice. Now, anchoring is a super powerful thing just in the sense of your own life. And my wife is way in tune with my way of anchoring things. But, you know, I used to be able to, and now I do this with my son. So here's an example with my son. My son will say on a Saturday afternoon when we take naps, I'll say, hey, bud, we're going to take a nap here at 2 o'clock. And he'll say, okay, for how long? And I'll say, well, I think we're going to sleep till 4 o'clock. So I'm anchoring the 2 hour mark, right? Because I know he's going to come back and try to negotiate me with less. And he goes, no, I think we should lay down till 2:15. So he's anchoring. He doesn't even know he's anchoring. He's just a little wicked smart ninja. And I'm like, really, ideally, I want to get to 3 o'clock is where I want to go, right? So I started at 4. He started at 2:15, and now all of a sudden I can say, well, okay, 3:45 is a good time. No, 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 no. I think 3 o'clock would be good. You know what, buddy? I agree with you. I think you're right. How about 3 o'clock? And now we have negotiated to actually the time that I actually wanted to be at anyway. So that's anchoring. I used to do this with my wife, and she's so in tune with it now, but I'd say, geez, I really want that new bass. I found a bass I like. I really love it. And she'd say, well, how much is it? And I'd say, oh, it's $1,500. And she's like, no way, you're not buying that. No, I'm just kidding. It's $850. Oh, okay, that's fine. So if I said it was $850, then her first reaction probably would have been the same as what it was. But because I was able to set up a realistic anchor, because that's the other part about anchoring, is it has to be realistic. If these things right here said $100 to 18, right? If this was $150 to 24 or something, then you go, wait a second, that's not realistic. So that anchoring is not going to work. It has to be a realistic relationship between the anchor and the real number you want to get to. Super powerful method of negotiation. So scarcity is something we see a lot, and really the focus of that is just to say that, hey, if you don't act now, you're going to miss out. We see this tons, and I have these travel examples here because we see this a lot with travel, because even if we're a Marriott Rewards person, or we like to stay at Hamptons, or whatever our flavor of a hotel might be, they're typically the first driver of a hotel is not necessarily the brand, but just the location, right? So if you're not in the exact location, I booked a trip out to doing a thought leadership thing out at Adobe Max in Los Angeles, and so I got on there very early, but the closest hotel I could get was a mile from the convention center, and I didn't really care which hotel it was going to be, because I really wanted to make sure that I was as close as I could so I could just walk. But scarcity really drove me to make sure I booked it, because of the fact that they were like, only limited rooms are still available. you need to book now, because I knew I'd have to be further out. And then once I get further out than a mile, then that ends up being just too long to walk, on a daily basis back and forth. And then you have to deal with getting an Uber or a Lyft or something, and there's about 1 million people trying to do the same thing. And so anyway, it's scarcity is just saying, look, if you don't take advantage of this now, you're going to be out. And we see this on Amazon a ton. They'll say only 3 in stock, more coming soon. Well, more coming soon could be today, but we don't know that. You don't know that by just looking at it. So loss aversion is that idea that you're going to miss out. It's a FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And I thought this was just such an awesome example. Get your free copy of Social Media Marketing Industry Report. Yes, I want to improve. No, I don't want the latest research, right? So it's basically not only are we doing loss aversion, but we're doing some self-actualization there as well. Saying, geez, don't you want to be your ideal self? Don't you want to be the person that you think you can be, and improving all the time, right? So you have these things all kind of work. They can work together. They're not mutually exclusive in the sense of the approach. But this is a really great call to action, how they set this up. And this is just saying, geez, if you don't take advantage of this now, you're going to miss out. And a lot of times you'll see this same kind of thing set up with foot in the door. Because you say, hey, look, you're going to miss out. Try your 30-day trial. Those kinds of things, right? So that's really what I wanted to cover for this week, and really rounding out what we have. Hopefully we'll get the Zoom thing wrapped up and figure out what is going on with that. And I'll post the Jeff Julian thing just for your information, for your continued growth in our class here, and what you're doing professionally. I just thought what he had to say about brand fandom and about influencers and about personalization with that research that I was doing for our content. I'm still waiting to talk to Senior Vice President of Coca-Cola, which is a pretty awesome score for an interview. He's the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Coca-Cola. So yeah, when you got friends that have those kinds of friends, that's pretty good. So anyway, hopefully we'll have those kinds of things for other follow-up classes. And if you have any more questions about the exam, please let me know. Somebody asked me a question about plagiarizing from the lectures, and you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to say, Steve said in a class this and this and this. Don't cite things like that. Just make sure that when you're using your minimum sources per question, that you are citing that information correctly. That's the most important part of that. So if you have any questions, let me know. Hit me up, and have a great weekend. Have a good fall break. Hopefully I'll see some of these tests by the early bird. And the early bird meant that it's due on Sunday, but I'm really just looking to wake up on Monday morning at 6 a.m. and having them in the Dropbox. So if they're in there, I guess I should have just said that Monday at 6 a.m. because people got confused when I said, geez, I'm going to give you 10 percentage points bonus for turning in your work early. And for some reason that I didn't communicate that correctly. So hopefully that's clear now. And if you have any other questions this weekend, just hit me up. I'm happy to jump on a Zoom and talk to you sometime during this weekend if I need to, if you get stuck and you just really need some help walking through some of this stuff, okay? So have a great fall break, and I will see everybody next week.